first member says, I hate my job. My boss is annoying. He gives me assignments and then changes his mind and gives it to somebody else and doesn't tell me. So I have to figure it out. And I don't especially like the guys I work with. And I was promised a raise months ago, but I still haven't got it. So what do I do? Even though it's a workplace question, it's still the same answer. You can't make good decisions while you're feeling fearful, while you're not being loving. So you find love, you trust it, you remember it, you share it. People who make major life decisions while they don't feel loved or loving almost invariably make the wrong choice because they make it out of fear. Then once you become more loving, you carry it with you to work. You're nicer to people. They tend to respond to your being nicer. I had a good friend who called me and told me he just hated his job, and I told him it wasn't about his job. So he of course protested that I didn't understand, but I said, well, I can't change your job, but we could teach you to feel happier. And he did, and months later he was in love with the same job. A woman just wrote me that she had been in a job where she was underpaid, where she was not enjoying herself, where she hated the job, almost exactly like you. She read the Real Love in the Workplace book, but more important, found people to unconditionally love her, went back to work, explained how she was worth more than she was being paid, got the raise that she asked for, got a better job, enjoys work more because she knows better how to get along with people, and loves her job. Now, this isn't going to happen at every job. Sometimes there are jobs we just will never like. But you got to start with the loving part, or you'll just go from job to job and discover that there are unloving people everywhere, because there are. So you end up just chasing your own tail since you're the problem. You can live with it and like it, live with it and hate it, or leave it after you've learned how to be loving. So how could you live with it and like it since you presently don't? Living with it and hate it, you already got that figured out. We just talked about that. You become a more loving person, the job tends to change. How can you live with it and like it even after applying love and you still don't like the place? Sometimes it's due to dissatisfactions like not being paid well. So you go into work and you say, I'm being paid X dollars an hour or per year, and the work that I do, I've looked around, it's worth X dollars plus 3, X dollars plus 2, X dollars plus 1,000, whatever it is. And that's what I'd like to be paid. Well, we can't afford to pay you that. Well, then you can't go in and say that unless you're prepared to leave. Otherwise, you're just complaining, and if you settle for not getting the raise you ask for, you usually look kind of stupid, and they're probably never going to give you a raise again. So look for another job first, and have that in the wings. That's just one way to do it. But remember that there are unhappy people and inequities in every job that you're going to go to. And remember that you're being paid for a job that will never be entirely fair. So what? They're not paying you to be the recipient of pleasure or justice, either one. So for one thing, stop complaining about it. Do something about it. Take action. Go in and require. Notice I didn't say demand. You just say, this is what I require if I'm going to stay here. More pay. Educate yourself more. Stay in the same job for another year while you take night classes or whatever, and qualify for either a better job at the same company or a job somewhere else. But take action. Simply complaining about it, you'll end up unhappy enough that your job performance will fall, and then you won't have to worry about quitting the job. They'll fire you from the job. So the main point is get loved first and then move. Do something about it. A woman came for a retreat, and she's divorced, has 2 kids. She was raised in a home with no love, and has begun to date. So her ex-boyfriend called just to talk, and he asked her for what she called a sexy picture. Now, even though he's her ex-boyfriend, which proves that it didn't work out, she said, in the past, I would have sent him a picture in an instant. She said, I was raised in a world where if you have a figure, you show it off. If you've got it, flaunt it. But see, she'd just been to the retreat where she'd seen and felt what it's like to be unconditionally loved. So she decided not to fall into that old trading. She just simply refused. Not long after that, another man that she had known for, she didn't say how long, I don't think, flew her up to his place, flew her 1,000 miles to his place for New Year's. So she did it just on a lark. She enjoyed being with him. She said that he said everything right. He was just like the perfect companion, the perfect date. He said things like, sweetie, I don't want you to ever spend another holiday alone. Oh, that's just such a touching line. Those of you who haven't tried that line, you really, really ought to. She loved it. I mean, do you get the feeling? It was just like, oh, he said all the right stuff. She said that she liked him too, but then before he could even bring it up, she said, I'm looking for a different kind of relationship than I've ever had before. And so I've decided that I'm not going to have sex till I'm in a committed relationship. She came home from her trip. He flew her home. And she's never heard from him again. Now, part of her was a little distraught at that. I mean, here was a possibility of a guy who could really turn into something. I just held her on the phone. She got the point. It would have been fun. They would have had a great night of sex, maybe two. Maybe they would have met up again. Maybe worse, they would have entered into a relationship for 6 months or a year. But she didn't fall for the initial trading, the initial high. The trick as an addict to anything, in her case praise, but an addict to drugs or praise or sex or anything else, is refusing the first hit. I can still remember what it was like the first time I decided not to use drugs, and then not to use the second day, and the third day, I don't mean just quitting for 12 hours. I did that hundreds of times. It's deciding you're not going to use. But we can't make that decision until we know there's a better way to live. It's just too tempting. So her whole life is different. I'm just very proud of her. A couple of months ago, I saw a couple that was in considerable trouble. She was cheating on him. He was angry. Their marriage was over. Neither of them had ever known what love was. So when they met each other, all they could do was find the right combination of trading, obligation, responsibility, the usual stuff, the usual imitation love cocktail. And because they each served the other the cocktail that was either most familiar or most desirable, well, then they married. They were in love. And then nothing. Within weeks, their marriage just fell flat. The beginning is easy, but then there's such disappointment. Neither of them had ever known anything better. So they figured, well, this is great. It fell flat quickly. They had kids. Still nothing. They thought children would kindle the spark. Children don't kindle a spark. Children just say me, me, me all day long. She wondered if she even wanted to be a mother or a wife. That's how unhappy it gets when we fall for that initial hit of imitation love that the lady just prior to this that I was telling you about, who was flown up to visit her boyfriend, she turned down the initial hit. Well, these two didn't know enough to do that. So they were stuck in a marriage that was enormously unsatisfying to both of them, and stuck with kids that they weren't really particularly happy to have. So she had an affair. They came here for an intervention. It was very difficult. Holy smokes. She was obsessed over this other guy. He was enormously combative. I mean, whoa, this guy was difficult. I taught them to love. That's all. Actually, mostly by just loving them. It wasn't easy, but they both finally recognized that the old ways had never worked, And they realized that, well, if they've never worked in all these years, 10 plus years, they never would. They both began their relationship believing that they knew what love was, but they were willing to face the truth that they really didn't. And when they left here, they persisted. They've called every single day. After every single day for 30 days with problems to solve and arguments to settle every single day for 30 days. Just the other day, I asked them how they were. And they both looked at each other and went, "We have no problems." As though that's how it had always been. She said, "I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. This is better than when we were newlyweds." And it really is. I don't ever tell people that, if they learn real love, they'll go back to the happiness they once had in their marriage, because that wasn't really happiness. That was just intoxication. And he said, "Oh, I'm honeymoon happy." You'd have to know him to know how profound that was. This is the guy who would argue with me over the time of day. I would say it was noon and he'd say, "No, it's 12 p.m. He argued with everything. These two are contented, and yep, they're going to have difficulties in the future. They're still going to have things to argue about. They're still going to have obstacles. But they've learned to replace the imitation stuff with what is real and what lasts. It's a pretty fun thing to see. In fact, it's been a pretty dang fun week. I was talking to another coach this week and went, "Is it the moon?" Because everybody that calls is saying how wonderful their life is. Just so you know, every week isn't like that. There are some of us who insist on hitting ourselves in the head with a hammer many, many times, usually till we pass out before we're willing to give up. Here's somebody who writes, "I've been having an uneasy feeling today. I've been trying to figure out why." We don't always need to know why. There was an old saying years ago, "Why ask why?" We don't have to overanalyze everything. Sometimes all we need to do is choose a next loving step. Just one. What's the next loving step I could do? What's something I could do kind for somebody else? Or sometimes you just have a bad day. You wake up and whatever, your hormones are off. The moon's out of alignment. Venus and Mars are in the wrong position in the sky. I don't know. And sometimes you'll never figure it out. Well, then just have it. Just eat cookies and watch movies all day. But don't cover it up or lie about it or treat it with alcohol or drugs or sex or praise or pleasing people or whatever. Just have it. It won't last forever. Really doesn't. This writer continues. "Well, I decided to participate in drama with my supervisor this morning. And during the process of the conversation, I thought I was being loving, but later I realized not even close. I saw what I did after I watched an archived video chat at lunch today. Bingo. I said, sometimes you don't have to figure out why you're having a bad day. Just do the next loving thing, or the next thing that brings you love. In this case, you took the next step. You watched a video instead of participating in more drama or complaining and whining and attacking people and making the day worse." You continue. I talked about needing, the video chat talked about needing to create drama to feel alive. Well, I'm way tired today, and I indulged in my past behavior of seeking drama, and yuck, it reminds me of how little kids get when they're tired or hungry. I pretty much acted the same way. Nearly all of us, in your defense, simply reenact childhood over and over again, like Groundhog Day without end. No happy ending for Bill Murray. You continue. "So I can simply start the afternoon over. I can just be tired." Good for you. It's like you read ahead. Sometimes you just have a bad day. I can just be tired, you say, but content. I can just snuggle up in your lap feeling like you love me and not create drama to feel awake and alive. It's really cool that even as I type this, getting the bad thoughts out and letting what I know to be true in, I'm relaxing. And I realize it's just part of being human. And feeling confident, seeing what I was doing and finding it within me where it's always been, to take care of myself and to share it with you and let you help me take care of myself. As you say, honey, like a little kid. Nice work. A really nice description of how we can respond to a bad day instead of making it worse. This writer says, my husband and I have been reaching out to love people. Right now we're doing our best to love a woman who has had a terrible life with abuse, drug use, depression, the whole bag of horror. She's completely changed her behavior. No more drugs. Either my husband or I spend some time with her, probably every other day, for several months now. She seems to cling to it a lot. And if she can't be with us, she becomes afraid again. Are we enabling her? Is it healthy now for her to be clinging this much? It's really obvious that she's very fragile. If I remember it right, she's only been around real love for less than a year, but she's been intensively clinging like this only for the last few months. This is a girl who is afraid beyond expression. And now she's found a mommy and a daddy. So no, this amount of clinging at this point is not abnormal or unhealthy at this point. I just did an intervention the other day with a woman whose life was a disaster. She was headed toward permanent medical disability just from her emotional state. Permanent disability. I've never held somebody that much in 2 days, ever. Just held her for 2 days. And at the end of the 2 days, she started to cry and said, what do I do when I go home? You keep clinging. In the beginning, when people whose lives have been a disaster find somebody who loves them, they need to cling. Just like a nursing baby. Nobody looks at a nursing baby and goes, oh, just grow up and get on with it. It's healthy to cling when we're really young. And since most of us were not allowed to cling when we were very young, then we come to think of clinging as pathologic. No, we needed it then, and since we didn't get it then, we've got to have it now. At some point, we have to be able to just latch on to somebody and cling for our very lives and feel free to do it and not be resisted and not be pushed away, to feel welcome, in fact. In fact, I told her that I was eager for her to cling. Now, it doesn't last forever, but goodness, at this point, really healthy. So as she clings to you, remember 2 things. Give love only as much as you can freely. Don't exhaust yourselves. And then eventually, not immediately, remind her to remember the love that you give her. People can get addicted to the pleasure of the connecting. If they don't take it in, trust it, and remember it, it won't last. So more and more, each time you talk to her, ask her what she's learning, what she's remembering. If she's in a panic, don't always reassure her. Tell her that she's forgetting. Ask her what she could be doing instead of being afraid. She has to increasingly grow. It might be slow, but she has to grow in strength, and sometimes it takes years. Sometimes people call me and they say, can you remind me that you love me? And I say, if they've had a long time to cling, no, I won't. You tell me if I love you. You give me 10 proofs that you've had within the last 30 days that I love you. Why do I do that? Because I'm tired of reminding them? Not at all. So that they can exert the effort to remember what they say with their lips about what they're learning. They remember far longer than if you say it in much the same way that our children remember the principles they say back to us, as opposed to our just repeating them over and over and over and over again. A child who's misbehaving, you don't just keep saying, don't hit your brother, don't hit your brother. Clearly that's not working. But saying to a child, so we've talked about this before, what did you learn? When the child says it, they remember it 10 times better. It becomes part of them. They own it. They just said it from their mouth. Same is true with people that we love. Sometimes they need to say what they remember. Here's somebody who says, I can be incredibly selfish and then lie to myself by saying, well, I'm just being myself. I'm just being me. A recent example was a wedding dance I was invited to. I chose to wear a dress shirt and jeans thinking, that's just who I am. I went to the wedding dance and I was completely underdressed for the occasion, and I did not enjoy it as much as I could have. Although I read the invitation, I didn't pay attention to what the bride and the groom asked of their guests. It said, the bride and groom would like this to be a formal event and request that men wear a tie and jacket and women wear appropriate dress attire. This is not an easy question. So when do you modify being you? Well, it helps if we start with the right question. If the first question is always, what do I want? Well, what about me? What about me? Then the answer you get is probably not going to be very selfless. You started with whether it was all right to be you. So you started off with a selfish premise. You were thinking about yourself. The first question here is, this event is for whom? The event is for the bride and groom. So then other questions follow. What would they want in their guests? It's their event, not yours. What could they tolerate in their guests? That's okay to ask. We'll get to the specifics of that in a minute. And then what do you want to do? How can you be still you and comply with the wishes of the bride and groom? Let's say you decide, after asking the first question, whose event is this, that you're willing to dress up, even though it's just not you. Well, then the problem is solved. Sometimes we just modify who we are and discover that if I put on a dress shirt and a tie, it probably won't kill me and won't alter my inner me. The problem's over. If you decide that you just can't stand to dress up, then you could email whichever person you know, the bride or the groom, and ask if they would rather that you came formally dressed or that you didn't come at all because you hate formal dress. And then you leave it up to them. Then you can be you and they can be them. It's a lifetime effort learning when it's appropriate to adjust to some degree what we want for the comfort of others without being addicted to pleasing people, because we can do that. If we give people what they would prefer because we want to, it's loving. If we do it because we have to, obligation, avoidance of disapproval, people-pleasing, it can become pretty unhealthy. I hate dressing up. I consider it dressed up to wear a shirt at all. So when I go to seminars, it turns out that it's distracting if you go naked, and so I actually wear a shirt and pants. But if it's a seminar I'm putting on, then I tend to dress pretty informally, like this, and jeans and sneakers. If it's a seminar somebody else is putting on, I'm speaking at a formal business convention, for example, and every single person in the audience is going to be wearing a suit. Then I'll wear a suit because it's their event. If I go to church, I wear a suit just out of respect. It doesn't detract from me being me to have to put on a suit every once in a while. I'm not somehow compromising my integrity, but this gives you an idea of it's something you have to just kind of work out bit by bit after you've learned to ask the right questions in the right order. This is from a woman who has known way more than her share of unhappiness, at least enough for 2 lifetimes. She said, I am swimming in love. Like, it feels literally. I just got your email, and it's been, actually I got it earlier today, and it's been washing over me and over and over. And I was thinking to myself that it's like waves washing up on the shore. Every moment, a new I love you rolling in. An infinite renewable supply, and I get to just sit in the surf and enjoy it washing over me. You really are capable of feeling great love. By the way, nice metaphor too. Wish I'd thought of it. You say, and then I got what my mistake has been. Until now, I was taking one I love you and trying to make it last, stretch out. But inevitably, like stretching a rubber band, it would get thinner and thinner and finally snap. And then I'd need to come and see you again or call you again to get another I love you and start the process of trying to make it last again. But it was like trying to hold a wave upon the sand. There's that nice metaphor again. I'd watch it drain through the cracks in my hands right in front of my eyes, helpless to stop it. But now I'm seeing there's not just one I love you, and that I need to somehow hold on to and stretch out. There's infinite I love yous. Every moment a brand new one. No need to hoard the one I got in the past. Every single moment is a new one and another one. Sadly, I couldn't relate to your phrase a few weeks ago on the video chat about every word is a kiss. I usually feel every word as an assault. Of course you do. All your life you were assaulted with words, especially by your father. You continue, but now I'm feeling every moment's a kiss. Just a never-ending series of new kisses, non-stop like waves rolling onto the shore. And all I need to do is sit in the surf, letting it wash over and over me, no worries of it ever stopping, running out or getting used up, just as the waves of the sea never run out. Not just one moment, but lots. And the other cool thing is that it's guilt-free. Me sitting in the surf doesn't in any way take away from or prevent anybody else from sitting in the surf, because the beach is infinitely long. It's crazy to think that there's any competition for love. The supply is simply too vast to ever even make a dent in it. Nice image. Nice metaphor too. This is from a man who's recently divorced. I've known for quite a while, he says, that at some level I was not feeling authentic because I was driven for years by wanting to be liked and admired by others for being a successful person, a businessman, and so on. Yep, true. You didn't trust anybody to love you, which is understandable since nobody did. Not unconditionally. So you learned to control what they thought of you. But now you do have people who love you. So the old behaviors are simply no longer needed, and in fact are even unproductive. You continue, keeping in mind, those of you who are listening, that he's referring to his recent divorce. You say, I've been feeling a number of things since the weekend. He came here for a weekend, and I wanted to write them down here. I think it might be all victim stuff. We'll see. I don't feel heard by her, by my ex-wife. That's true. Your wife doesn't hear you. I know her. She doesn't listen to you. She doesn't understand you at all. But your feeling victimized by that is unnecessary. I feel like I've been blamed for everything. True. True again. But again, so what? Her blaming is all about her, not you. Even though much of what she blames you for, you might be responsible for. But you don't need to feel blamed. Her blaming's about her. I feel like I've been replaced. Well, yes, but it's up to you whether you just let it go or feel victimized by it. She's replaced you with another guy, but really, do you want to be the other guy? Obviously not, or you wouldn't have gotten divorced. I feel like I've had the presence of my children taken away for 50% of the time. Well, yeah, kind of, but you agreed to it too. So again, you can choose not to be a victim. I feel like I haven't been backed up by her. She's allowed her friends to abuse me by text and has attacked me and hasn't defended me to people who've gotten the wrong idea. I feel like my hopes and dreams of a unified family are dashed. Yeah, again, all true. But the key point is that there will always be people who will do these things to us. But then we get to choose to just see our part in it and then let go of the rest. No pain. I feel like a lost boy, you say. And I think some of the above outlines this, and yep, it's scary. Now see, that's a really nice little piece of honesty. All those other things, a little on the victim-y side, but really you're just a lost boy and afraid. And that would be scary if you were alone. But you're not. Very cool. So, nice work. You'll get there. Getting over a divorce is not an overnight thing, but you're on your way. Sylvie story. Jeanette writes and says, I asked Sylvie to go to the den and get her shoes on. She flipped the light switch, but no light came on. She slouched her shoulders, pouted her bottom lip, and started whining, Mom, the light won't work. I can't see. So see, Sylvie's not always sweet and loving. I snapped back at her, Sylvie, I can't hear any more whining. She smiled, walked over to me with her arms outstretched and said, I love you, Mom. I was lacking love, which she recognized. Next time, I'd like to hear what she's really saying, not merely her words or tone. Now, there's a bunch of cool things to learn from this. Sylvie was not feeling loved when she pouted. It's not possible for a child to feel always loved. They're just little kids. Often, even if they're being loved unconditionally, their idea of love is that they're getting the candy that they're reaching for. They have immature perceptions. Her mother wasn't being loving, but Sylvie had been loved enough times in a row with a consistent enough pattern that she recovered from her mother snapping at her so she could regain her sanity at 4 years old and stay calm. There'd been a pattern of loving. So when her mother forgot, or just didn't, whatever reason, love her in that moment, it didn't kill her. Remember, as you hear this story, that it was not Sylvie's responsibility to say, I love you. She was just really going over to comfort her mother, which worked. Love is the thing that works no matter who it comes from, the adult or the child. I know a critical and angry woman, and she wrote and said, it's hard to believe that it's been almost a week since we got home from our Real Love retreat in Rome. I don't remember how many retreats ago this was. It's been much more difficult to readjust to being away from the Real Love family and groups this time. And it was almost painful the last couple of days to know that my friends were going to groups and I wasn't. It isn't that I don't feel loved, I just miss the companionship of being in groups. Now, listen slowly, because this isn't criticism. It's just a demonstration of where our thoughts can go and how it affects us. So look at your language just from those 4 brief lines. Much more difficult is how you described your life. Much more difficult to readjust. Almost painful to know that friends or other friends are going to group. It isn't that I don't feel loved. Notice 2 negative words in one sentence. Isn't, don't. I miss the companionship, negative, in just 4 lines. We've got lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. It's all negative. It's about loss, fear, regret, and even jealousy in 4 lines. We become what we think. So, what if we thought about this differently? Very often, simply having a different perspective of a thing changes everything. Our feelings, our behavior, the whole deal. What if instead you said, I'm so happy that I've had these experiences that have enriched and changed my life. I think about them all day. I carry them with me. I can see the love of others in every word that I speak now, in every light moment. I'm so happy that some of my real love friends live in places where they do have a group and where physical companionship is possible with each other. All describing the same event, but with these truthful words, they're actually more truthful, not just more positive. We're filled with hope and light. With all the negative words, fears based on lies, because all the negative descriptions are based on a fear that things are going to stay terrible. Those are lies. They blot out the light. You continue. I feel so frustrated. Notice the language again. When I hear someone complain that 30 minutes is just too far to drive to a group in their area. I think most of us from our weekend know how blessed folks are who have a group within a few hours drive, but too many of them don't have a clue. Look at the words again. So frustrated. Don't have a clue. How about instead, if you said, I'm so grateful that I can drive X hours, or I can fly to Rome or to Phoenix or to Seattle or to Coventry, England, or wherever. Or I'm so grateful that I have a phone or Skype or text or whatever to instantly be reminded of the love that I have. Or I'm so grateful I have a memory so I can keep the feeling all the time. The words we choose to describe something are not accidental. They're a reflection of the judgments that we make of the world. And of course, they determine how we feel. And how we feel determines our words in turn. And if we choose negative words, it all spirals down into the toilet. So, I'm not criticizing here, not saying you shouldn't have said it this way. Just be more aware of the words that you say. All of us need to be more aware of the words that we say. And use the words that would uplift, edify, instruct, encourage not only us, but the people around us. Here's a mother who writes, tonight, about 15 minutes before the kids' bedtime, my daughter, Hobbit, which I believe is her actual name, age 6, whined that she didn't want to go to bed. They'd been watching a movie for 2 hours and it had just ended. She's also sick today with a cold and has been understandably more fussy than usual, though not much, I have to say. My internet hasn't been working properly for the last 2 hours, and I had planned on doing something online during that time, so I was unable to. I was getting angry about that. How dare I be inconvenienced? Don't they know who I am? So when Hobbit whined that she didn't want to go to bed, I did not talk to her as I normally would. I snapped at her. She insisted that I read her a story, and I told her I didn't want to tonight. We've all done this. We've all been inconvenienced by whatever, tired from work, the internet doesn't work, somebody didn't return our text, and we know how it goes when we take it out on our kids. Time comes to be tucked in, and Hobbit loudly insists that I come in and tuck her in like now. To which I respond, I'm coming, don't remind me again. Still angry. I'm shaking my head at myself now while I'm writing this, like, duh. I was still stupidly distracted by the internet not working. I go in, I quickly kiss her and her sister and leave the room promptly. Not much of a tuck-in at all, really. And it was obvious that Hobbit didn't like that. So she gets louder and louder and starts coughing and carrying on like she's really in pain. Kids are great. And I know it's all an act, because she'd not been coughing for the entire time that she was watching the movie, for all of dinner time, and for most of the day. Then she starts screaming that her legs hurt. I'm laughing because after 7 kids and 8 grandkids, they can come up with anything. I think I'm having vertigo. And then she says she's bored and she can't sleep because of this or that. They're very creative when it comes to getting attention. And usually because it works. So I head for the bedroom and she meets me halfway, crying and putting on a good show. What's fun here is that you're seeing all the craziness. You may not have seen it at the time, but you're seeing it now, yours and hers. It would have been so baffling to you before. So, way to go. You continue. I'm angry as I begin talking to her. I'm explaining what's happening, why she suddenly feels like she does, that she's lying about the coughing and not being able to sleep and her legs supposedly hurting, and she's causing all this to happen when it wasn't happening earlier, all because she didn't want to go to bed. And as I'm saying all these things, I get calmer. And as I get calmer, she settles down. You got it, kid. She just wanted your calm, loving attention. Then you wrote, everything changes. My anger disappears completely, and I don't care about the internet anymore. She stops coughing. She stops crying. Turns out love cures coughing. And we look at each other for a couple of minutes. All the while, I'm standing at the door and she's in her bed. I go over to her because she asked to be tucked in again. So I do, for real this time. And I ask her what she forgot, and me too. She says, that you love me. With this huge smile on her face, she throws her arms around my neck and squeezes, and she says, I think my cold just disappeared. I think the talking did it. This is a 6-year-old. I say, your cold is still there, but when we don't feel loved, everything feels worse. She was reacting to my I don't love you messages. Once we both remembered that we were loved, we were at peace again. Hallelujah. Love the honesty. It's a lesson for me, you continue. As I was talking to her, I was reminding myself what was true. My happiness isn't based on the internet working or not, and I too forgot that I was loved, which made everything worse. She's sound asleep right now, and I've got a few tears in my eyes just thinking about how powerful this is. This would never have happened in the past. Never. She would have gone to bed unhappy. I wouldn't have cared, too distracted by my own selfishness. I am so glad I'm over that. I am in awe. Me too. Deep awe. Way to go. Really is a bit of a miracle. Here's a story from Zoey, who's 16 months old. So this is a little kid. Of course, her mother and father aren't really big, so when she's 12, she's still going to be a really little kid. But at 16 months, she's really teeny. And her mother says, because we listen to Zoey all the time, she's very clear about communicating her needs. If you don't listen to a kid, they're not clear. They get louder and louder and scream, and they can't even remember what they started screaming about. You continue. She's already practically speaking at 16 months. Before bedtime, we give her a bottle of milk and read her a particular story. When she wants a nap, she tries to open the fridge, which communicates what she wants. And when she can't, she'll go pick out her bedtime book and her blanket and give them to us. My mother says that if all adults express themselves as clearly as Zoey at 16 months, the world would be wonderful. Yeah, it really would. They teach us a lot. This woman says, yesterday I was cornered by my insane neighbor. Now, this might mean more to you if you know that the person who's writing this has for years been regarded as unremittingly crazy. And over the last, year, I have rarely seen somebody change this much. She has embraced real love and just given up a life of insanity. So, keeping that in mind, she says, I was cornered by my insane neighbor. I engaged. I forgot myself. I got angry. I told her I felt offended and upset, and then I let go. She had remembered something from 3 years ago and made it a drama 3 years later, like spreading manure. Any word can be twisted into manure. So I learned that for me, these crazy people, like my neighbor, are much like PMS for me. I can just see the effects and let them go. From now on, I will not engage with crazy people. If I see her, I will turn the other way, and I'll be on an important phone call whenever that happens. So I'm focusing on the good from now on. Yesterday, I also was invited to dinner with another client who is not a dramatist. We had a great time. She wanted to cook together next time. She's from France, so we'll be doing French cooking. I love having get-togethers like this. It's fun. I don't have time to be victimized by insane people anymore. I have 40 years of that poop, of engaging with crazy people and being a crazy person. I am going to smile and walk away. I am tired of being afraid. Dang, honey. I mean, you're discovering what real power is. You spent 40 years reacting to the craziness around you, which of course made you just as crazy as the people you were reacting to. You simply don't want to eat poop anymore. And you realize you don't have to. Woohoo. Beautiful. You'd have to know her well to know what kind of miracle this is. It's just a complete 180-degree change in somebody's life. Here's a girl who says, my name is Susie, and I'm experiencing what I think might be a real love issue. She's new to real love, between my mother and myself. Since last August, I have not been wanting to really go home at the end of the day. I still live with my parents. I'm 20, simply because I feel like I'm being forced to come home and be, quote, part of the family, end quote, which I assume means you hear that a lot. Come home and be part of the family. It's just so heartwarming, isn't it? My family has never been the affectionate or openly loving type, and I don't expect them to change. But the way I feel about my family's behavior is becoming unsettling. And that often happens when we learn that there's an alternative. People who've lived in horrifyingly unloving families just consider it normal until they meet somebody who lives in an unconditionally loving way, and they can see the difference, and the difference is dramatic. You continue, I do not enjoy feeling like being part of the family is a job. It's like I'm only accepted if I abide by my mom's rules and I do everything by her book without making any mistakes. And I'm sure you're right about that. Your mother accepts you conditionally. That's pretty obvious, or you wouldn't say it in this way, which is not the real love that you need. You continue. Once I make a mistake, my mom openly tells me that I'm a disappointment, an idiot, stupid, selfish, unappreciative, inconsiderate, and that she will remove me from her and her family's life. She has deliberately not spoken to me for sometimes days or weeks because she didn't want to include me in family matters if I didn't do things her way. So what I just said earlier about her being conditionally accepting, I hadn't read this when I said that. She's not just conditionally accepting, she's openly harmful and destructive toward you. She's very unloving. And at age 20, you don't need to hang around this anymore. In fact, I would recommend that you get away from it, from this kind of influence. Is there any way that you can become independent financially? Can you live anywhere else with family members, friends, whatever? Because this kind of environment is crippling. Every single person that I see here who is emotionally stunted, emotionally crippled, disabled, handicapped, it's because they were treated like this by somebody. And in your mother's case, it's pretty glaring. You've already been damaged. You need to get out as soon as you can. You continue. In her defense, I did do things that were against her wishes, such as not communicating with her about my whereabouts, not coming home at the end of the day, not helping the family keep the house in order. This is really sweet of you, honey, but in her defense, to use your words, there's no defense for the way she treats you. I'm sure you make mistakes from time to time. What child doesn't? But there is no justification for a parent to speak to you as your mother does, to say that you're a disappointment and worthless and stupid, and that she's going to cut you out of her life. Get out. Get out and start your life over. You say, instead, I spend my time with my significant other, my boyfriend, who explains to me that it's not my fault that my mom feels this way, but rather her own insecurities and need for control over me and everything else that's leading her to behave this way toward me. Yes, it is not your fault that your mother behaves as she does, but you also need to get away from it. Your mother's responding to her own pain, and it's not your job to help her. You say, I've talked to different people about my situation, and their suggestions are leading me in different directions. My sisters believe that I should just suck it up and listen to my mom no matter how I feel. Well, that's completely wrong. Very wrong. Your sisters don't know what they're talking about, and it's understandable that they would say that because they were raised by the same woman who's treating you this way. So they're similar hostages or prisoners. And other people are telling me, you continue, that I'm not responsible for the way my mom feels and that I should focus on what makes me happy and find people who will love me for exactly who I am, even if it's not my family. Yes, those people are right. And get out of that house, because her influence is just too damaging. It is not possible for a 20-year-old, who in many ways is still a child, to just get over the influence of her mother telling her that she's worthless and stupid and flawed. It's just too much to deal with. Go away, heal, learn to feel loved, learn to be loving, and then when you're ready, you can come back and spend time with this woman. I would say with your mother, but she really hasn't behaved like a mother with you. Here's somebody who says, I wanted to share my learning with you. Over the weekend, I chose to stay in a state of fear. It started with one thought. What if the real love that has helped me get to where I am now disappears? This led to another negative thought and another negative thought. Very understandable. You don't quite trust that an entirely different world is possible. It's understandable. But the only way out of this, baby, is to find at least one person that you completely trust to love you. It's the only way you'll find this world you're looking for. You continue, in my state of fear, I started to look for evidence to prove that the love had already begun to stop, that I was not loved or lovable, and I interpreted innocent comments and events as proof of this. I realize I do this a lot when I'm in fear. Even when I received love from you and others, I still chose to remain in fear and could not see the evidence that I was loved that was right in front of me. You just proved something I've talked about many, many times. First, we have a feeling, and usually we're not conscious of choosing the feeling. In fact, all you have to do is not consciously choose love. You have to invite love into your life. You don't have to invite fear. All you have to do is just do nothing. And fear will beat your door down, break in, and take over your soul. So all you have to do is not choose love. Fear will step in. So once you're consumed by fear, then you find evidence to support it. First, we have the feeling. Then we use our brains to find evidence to support how we feel. And it's easy to do. We can always find evidence to support our feelings. If I'm fearful and paranoid, I can see potential attacks in the faces and movements and words of everybody around me. Paranoid schizophrenics do it every day. As long as we choose fear, or as long as we simply don't choose love, we're dead. We find more evidence, create more fear, and on it goes. You continue. I reached out to a wise man on Monday. I explained that while I can feel the love in the moment, I can't seem to hold on to it. After I end a call or finish reading an email, with time, the love evaporates. I told the wise man that I didn't really know if people truly cared about me when I'm not there in front of them. I didn't know if I ever crossed their minds or your mind, other than when I email you. Because to me, that is what caring would look like in my crazy world. And the wise man asked a very good question. How would I know? How would I know if you or him were sitting there one Sunday afternoon and thought, I wonder how she's doing? The answer is, I wouldn't. I'm still believing the old definition of love in my head rather than real love. This lady who just left here from an intervention several days ago called me earlier today and was saying, I was beginning to wonder if you still loved me, because she described an unloving interaction that she'd had with somebody and how it hadn't gone well and how it had convinced her that she wasn't lovable. And I said, well, go over to the desk and pull the drawer open. Go over right now. So I waited. She went over to the drawer. I said, now pull out the phone book. She brought the phone book over to the computer screen where we were Skyping. And I said, just start calling people randomly in the phone book, and I'll bet you can find a whole lot more people who will prove that you're not lovable. You're looking for trouble. You're looking for people not to love you. It's stupid. Instead, listen to the people who do. The people who are telling you that they don't love you are simply telling you that they're not capable of loving. You continue. The wise man helped me to see that this is my victim behavior. I think his exact words were, it's your favorite victim game, and that I love to gather evidence. I was shocked. I'm no victim, but I laughed out loud at the same time because I could see that when I'm in fear, I do gather evidence that people don't love in order to support the old lie I've believed all these years, that I'm not good enough. This is my victim thinking. Poor me. Nobody loves me. I'm all alone. It's familiar, although not pleasant, and I get to be right. This is so funny and so stupid. Yes, it is. Now, in the beginning, you were right. Nobody did love you. The people that you looked to most and counted on to love you didn't. But they were just telling you about themselves, that they didn't know how to love. But of course, you didn't know that. So when they said, we don't love you, and the implication is because of you, just like this lady earlier whose mother tells her that she's stupid and worthless and an idiot, when the implication is that it's you and you're a child, you believe that it's you, that you're not lovable. You continue. Today I know that I am loved. I feel it without the need to Skype you or this particular wise man every single day. The feeling has always been there. You've been loving me for years. I know that if I need you, all I have to do is reach out, but I'm not alone in between those times. That's a wonderful feeling. So what have I learned? To get loved, feel it, and remember it. I think I've heard this phrase before. To see my victim behavior for what it is, and to make a choice not to be a victim. It really is that simple. And we've heard variations of this all through the video chat. Find the love you need. Once you find it from anybody, believe it. Trust them all the way. Once you have enough evidence that somebody can love you, just dive in. If you made a mistake and it's somebody that can't love you, oh, you can always change your mind and move on. Trust them. Remember it. Carry it with you wherever you go. And then when you're able, share it. Practice loving other people. It's simple. It's very powerful. It always works. We'll see you next week.